Real-time crime centers have become a cornerstone of modern policing, helping agencies connect information faster, improve coordination, and make smarter decisions when seconds matter most. But building or refreshing a center can be complex. Constant Technologies helps simplify the process. Constant has partnered with law enforcement agencies across the country to plan, design, and build real-time crime centers, communication centers, drone operation rooms, and emergency operations centers, spaces that are purpose-built to support today's public safety missions. From American-built operator consoles to advanced video wall systems, we focus on the physical environment and technology infrastructure that brings your data and teams together. Our experienced design team works closely with your agency to create layouts and plans that support current operations and future growth. The result is a command environment where video communications and collaboration come together, helping your team move from reactive to proactive policing. Learn more at constanttech.com and schedule a complimentary design consultation. To get started, contact my friend, Lieutenant Sean Arthur, retired from the Collier County Sheriff's Office, at 239-469-4901. Welcome to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm John Creamer, Deputy Executive Director of FDSA. Each episode, I sit down with law enforcement thought leaders to tackle critical issues shaping the future of public safety. Together, we'll explore key topics that empower law enforcement professionals to navigate challenges, lead with confidence, and advance their careers. Take a pause, gain valuable insights, and lead your career with purpose. Thanks for listening. Hey, welcome to A Tactical Pause. This is John Creamer. This is one of the new episodes of 2026, and I'm so glad to have a comrade, a colleague on with us today, and this is Dr. Tracy Hejmanowski. And Tracy, if you would, tell us about you. Tell us how you got involved with first responders in the military.
Certainly. Thanks for having me on, John. It's a pleasure to be here. I spent about 19 years in the Department of Defense working as a combat trauma psychologist, working with first responders, but on the military side, of course, MPs, MAs, Master at Arms, security forces, firefighters, certainly corpsmen, medics. And I had my head in the sand quite a bit with that in terms of just really being scope locked on the military. And I'm not proud to say that I wasn't really paying attention all that much to the first responders in my community. And I take that seriously because I think that happens in our community every day. So I'm happy to be in this world now. I left in 2018 and pivoted over to, I had been running retreats for veterans for a very long time while I was in the Department of Defense and as a Navy psychologist. And when I came back into the civilian world, I realized very quickly that there was a need. I started doing ride-alongs in my county and could very easily see how a civilian first responder world was very complex, and there was not respite from it. There was not an opportunity where they could really get away if they were in their community or adjacent to their county or whatnot. So ride-alongs with a local sheriff's office opened my eyes quite a bit. I was offered a position working as an embedded mental health consultant in another county, and then immersed myself into the world of first responders and started a nonprofit to continue running retreats as I had with veterans for first responders. So it's been a wild ride, including some wild rides with some ride-alongs, but it's really been professionally and personally incredibly gratifying. There's some overlap and a lot of differences between the two communities, and any opportunity I have to bridge the gap between those two communities, I seek that out as well.
I didn't know all that. I knew some of that, but I didn't know to the depth of your background there. You started with the DoD as a contractor, and I kind of sort of can understand that. My new son-in-law is a DoD contractor, but certainly not in mental health. He's in another arena there. How did you get into the DoD contracting? Was that something that you did after earning a master's degree or Ph.D., or did you go there? How did that happen?
I earned my doctorate from the University of Connecticut before I had any affiliation with the military. My husband was in the military at the time, so that kind of brought me around to different places. And I typically worked as a Red Cross volunteer until I was licensed. So I got my license actually after we were stationed overseas. And then I had an opportunity to, circumstances as they were, I took a commission as an active duty Navy psychologist while I was overseas. Came back to officer indoctrination school and then got stationed back over there. So after I got off of active duty at a couple different duty stations, then I switched over to a contracting job and had the pleasure of building and being the program manager for the Deployment Health Center in Jacksonville, Florida at NAS.
Okay.
And that was a pleasure because I had the distinct opportunity of only working in operational psychology as I had. So working with operators, working with people who were very forward-leaning, getting them spun up for deployment, taking care of them when they got back. And it was different from mental health. So it was just not so much a paradigm shift for me, but for a lot of people who were looking for something that wasn't the typical mental health exposure, where they felt maybe not understood and they were a different population. I got accused all the time of, although I never said it, people would say, "Oh, you think your guys are special." And I said, well, my guys didn't ask to be special, but because they've been combat deployed, they are special. They're in a smaller, percentage. They're 1%ers, and because of that, yes, they have dark humor, and yes, they curse more, and yes, I can keep up with them and on both fronts. And so we did things differently. We did equine therapy and scuba assisted breathing retraining, and we really did things outside of the box, even though I was constantly reminded to get back inside my therapy box. So I was a bit of a rogue and probably a thorn in their side.
Yeah.
But I just told them that the folks I work with color outside the lines for a living. So you can't expect me to color inside the lines for treatment.
You're 100% right. And I would say that most of those things that you're maybe called out about being a rogue are actually the norm now, when you say.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. It set me up very well for working with first responders outside of the military.
Yeah,
for sure.
So it was good. It was important that you built that bridge. So your husband is in the military, was in the military. So you know the strains and the stresses of what that's like. And then your work has been with that. So when you guys got out, when you got back to Jacksonville, what is your nonprofit and what opened that door to turn part of your focus to first responders?
Absolutely. So I had worked with a nonprofit when I was contracting with the military, worked with a nonprofit called Gratitude America. And I was one of the facilitators, and we would put on retreats that were 3 nights, 4-day retreats. They were always no cost. I approached my nonprofit when I was shifting into the first responder world and asked if we could start a program under that umbrella. And at the time, the board wasn't ready to do that. So I respectfully asked if I could create a sister nonprofit, which I did. And we incorporated formally as a 501 in 2020. So I took a lot of what I had worked on and what we had put together on the veteran side, because I saw that camaraderie-based healing and interventions were exponentially helpful, and that the trajectory of shift and change was so notable inside of 3 days. So I shortened the retreat up a little bit because I know it's a strain for first responders to get away from their job or their second job. And we created a very tightly packed, what we call a recalibration retreat for first responders. And when we have a retreat where they can bring their significant other, we call it a restoration retreat, because the focus is also on restoring the connection between those two people, whoever that loved one is who they bring, and also giving them as much education and perspective as possible. We find a lot of times that the support person who comes, whether it be a parent, an adult child, a brother, sister, a spouse, we hear often from them that they learn more about their loved one from listening to other first responders, and vice versa. And so what we see there's a building up of compassion and grace, because they're hearing, it's taking the pressure off of their loved one to share about the wear and tear of the job and the burden of service, because helpers don't like to complain and don't tend to ask for help. So this gives them almost like an osmotic effect of they just absorb it by listening to their loved ones, brothers and sisters in service. And of course, we provide a lot of education about the effects of hypervigilance, how communication style and parenting style differs as a function of being inordinately exposed to negativity in the job. And we do team building challenges and we bonfire at night. And it's really based on this cohort effect of allowing people to feel that, one, they're not alone, two, they're not unique in what they're going through. And there is a way to experience, I hate to say healing because it sounds a little woo-woo, so I kind of put it in quotation marks, but we do see there's a visible and visceral shift in people from the day they show up to the day they leave. And the only consistent comment we get from people at the end is, you really should add a day to this retreat. And so I look at them and say, I think we both know you wouldn't have showed up if it was an extra day. And they say, yeah, you're probably right. Maybe you should just have an optional day. Maybe it should just be for the first responders. So it's great feedback to get, because I think what happens is by Sunday, we were out in the woods for this beautiful facility. There's time to kayak and fish and in between. So we talk hard, play hard, relax hard, rinse and repeat. I think by Sunday, they're really feeling that connection with people who they were complete strangers, when they showed up. And I think there's a sense like we're just getting started. I trust these people. We're joking around the bonfire, and I want more of that heavy, deep, raw conversation. So I love doing that. It fulfills me. And if I could just do that, every weekend, I would. Not that I don't love the other the other jobs that I have and work that I do, but it's just remarkable to see such a level of reluctance and hesitation on day one. And I have this idea that's like by the third meal, people are pulling chairs closer together. They're not just sitting alone at their table. They're moving around. And it's just wonderful to see, because it's just really just humanity and people taking care of each other without realizing they're doing it.
Yeah. So a couple of things, if I may.
Certainly.
So part of what FDSA does, for the listeners, you and I met, over in Clay County. We brought in Captain Josh Bitsko, who's retired from Las Vegas Metro. And Josh was one of our speakers, and he came in and talked about the 1 October sniper shootings in Las Vegas. And we had a large event, and you and I met in person. I think we had talked on LinkedIn and some other circles. And then P.S. Josh went on. He's written a book now, and he's taught like 4 more classes for us, and he's been on the podcast. So he's just exploding, and he's just a tremendous wealth of information for first responders. But secondly, for you, Tracy, and for our listeners, a lot of what we do and what I've had the latitude from our board and our executive director to do is kind of wander down different rabbit holes about resiliency and first responders from some of my own personal experiences, right? I did 30 years, and I'm certainly have been affected by that and affected by things I brought into law enforcement. So I had the opportunity to go to a retreat, if you will, in California, and it was wonderful. And then I went to a retreat in South Carolina called Warrior Path, and that was a 7-day experience, and it was also wonderful. And I left both of those places with a new platform, with a new path forward. And the work that was left is for me to do, but it certainly helped clear the battlefield in my mind and help me have focus. And I think that's a lot of what you and your team would offer, right? It's the same thing.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then the importance of finding the right retreat to go to, or a series of retreats to go to, is number one, that it has to be safe, that the first responder has to feel safe to go there. And then you do a lot of team building, if you will, to bring that camaraderie so first responders open up, right?
Absolutely. I think that there's a natural, I've been to Warrior Path as well, and I've been to other retreats, and there's always a bit of apprehension, fear of the unknown and not knowing who's going to be there and what the vibe is going to be among the group. And we spend a lot of time team building and getting to know people. We get them a little uncomfortable, but we also get them laughing. So we do things that are challenging and a little bit goofy and, but not uncomfortable, so that people don't feel like they have to perform. And I think that when you get people into more of their human space, it allows them to put their guard down a little bit, because even as a therapist, I have my professional persona and I have a personal persona, and those are very different things. And when you can get people to, especially when the professional persona is the master identity, I think it's difficult for people to put their guard down. And when they're in an environment where they feel that they can be a bit more vulnerable, while feeling sort of sensitive to everything around them, I think that's where the magic starts, because people sense it in each other. And then disclosure starts. And I find that it happens so much more readily than it does in a therapy office, for example. I love doing therapy, and I value it, and I've been doing it for almost 26 years. And I still really love the retreat experience, because it allows people to think about themselves in a slightly different way too. And there's less pressure because you're not sitting right across from someone and they're staring at you, and there are all these demand characteristics and expectations of the situation. And so when you bring people in and they kind of feel like, oh, we're in the same boat, we don't know what's going on, what's going to happen, then, they just kind of, there's this sense of built-in camaraderie that we'll be able to get through it. And it just takes one brave person to be able to share. Our last retreat, we had somebody who was really kind of buttoned up, his master muscle was tight in his jaw, and he had his arms crossed, big guy, lots of years on the job. And he came alone to one of the restoration retreats where people typically bring someone. And I think that was maybe throwing them off as well, but we would never turn anyone away if they don't have someone to bring at that time. And he was the first person to open up, and it was almost, you could almost feel the tension, right? Like he was just so full that it was almost like a burst, and he said, I'm going to get us started, and set the tone. It was so wonderful, because everyone, you could see people's body language, right? Their shoulders rolled back. They sat back in their seat. Their arms, went by their side. They got a little bit closer to their support person. And it was just phenomenal. We couldn't have paid him to do something that fantastic.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I think that was the one of the many things that's happened in our culture is phrases get misused. But I think there's a part of Me Too that goes along with this. And what I mean by that is, if you're sitting in a room of first responders and there's egos involved, because the egos aren't there because the first responder is an asshole. The ego is there as a psychological protective barrier, and then for somebody in the room to be brave enough, a man or a woman, to be brave enough to go, hey, this happened to me, and this really messed me up, and I'm really working on this. And then somebody else looks over and says, hey, that happened to me too. Something like that. And then there's a floodgate. Wouldn't you say there's a floodgate? Because
absolutely.
All these strong men and women are holding on. They're compressed.
There's a universality of experience, but if it's not tapped into, we don't know. And I think personally and professionally that the greatest need we have is to be understood. I think that is a precursor to really bad outcomes if we feel like nobody gets us. And so I love seeing that, where people start nodding their head, or they've got strong eye contact across the room with someone. Even the way we sit is set up so that people are across from one another, not in a circle, but it kind of this U shape where everybody can see everybody. And there's also a lot of compassion when people do get emotional. So of course, the person getting emotional, unless it's anger, the person who's getting into more tender emotion is typically feeling really self-conscious, if not in the moment, then immediately afterward. But what I see with everyone else is this very clear, physically leaning forward, looking around for tissues, and just their hearts are full of compassion for this person. And I remind people that we are not special. If we lean in and have grace and compassion for someone, that they will also have it for us. That, yes, everyone's going to feel self-conscious when they cry. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
But that it is this letting out of physical energy and emotional energy that is so valuable, even though we don't realize it in the moment. And people will often say, I feel like 1,000 pounds have been taken off my shoulders, because there's just all this emotional sponging up throughout a shift, let alone a career, and the sponge has to be squeezed so that you can reset and get ready to, every sponge gets saturated, and we don't blame the sponge for being saturated. We just say that it is what it is, and this sponge has been exposed. Just like if there was a radiology technician that had a badge on, and the badge goes off saying, hey, you've hit your max exposure to radiation. I wish we could somehow put that on first responders so that when that alarm went off, we just looked at each other and say, okay, you got to, you need 3 hots and a cot, or you need to be, to be restored and reset. And there would be no judgment.
So let me say something that sounds kind of crazy, but it's not. So I would think that most, in my experience, most first responders that are on the job now, the ones that I've been around lately are under 25. Mm-hmm. Some have college degrees, some don't, and of course they only have a few years of experience. And God bless mm-hmm. them. I was there as well. And what mm-hmm. I mean by that is a lot of people don't know the value of a sponge. Right. And they don't know what it does. And they certainly don't know what it looks like when it gets full. But for our listeners that don't know, when a sponge is full, it's soaking. And if you just touch it, all of a sudden moisture starts to come out.
Yes.
Right. And for first responders, most of us somewhere down the line become a sponge that is so full. And we're just waiting for somebody to have the right touch to help us get that out.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what you offer. And I think that's what some of these other programs offer. And it ties right back into a really important statement that you made a minute ago, is that not just first responders, but I think all humans, regardless of where they are on this planet, have this longing to be understood. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes. It's fundamental. It's just existential. It's, it's just built into us. We're built for connection. We're hardwired for it. So we have to know that we're okay in the eyes of other people. Everyone else is a mirror, so that if we're accepted, and people are even that slight nod of the head, or somebody, tagging on to the end of our sentence and filling in and, joining us with it is medicine in and of itself. That is the magic that happens. Otherwise we feel isolated and doubtful of ourselves, and it's just really unhealthy. And I think that's why a lot of people stay away from retreats and some alternative interventions like that, because almost like instinctively people know that this might tap into this. And as people know, if you have an 80-pound rucksack on your back mm-hmm. and you stop, you're in a ruck and you stop for a pause, most people will not take the ruck off. They know better.
Yeah.
Because taking it off is incredibly painful and uncomfortable, and putting it back on is depressing because you have to think, I have to do this all over. And so a lot of times we would rather stay full and drip, drip, drip. And we think, of course, the drip is oftentimes a very unpleasant emotional state. So we get irritable, or we get short-tempered, or we take it out on other people instead of being tearful or whatnot. And in first responders, being exposed to threat, tragedy, and transgression, the middle one, a lot of tragedy, which no one's really trained for, that's where the emotional sponging up comes from. And it also happens on, my perspective on in the job of first responders is that 3 personas are showing up. There's your professional self, your personal self, and your prior self. Mm-hmm. So when you're sponging up, you might be sponging up from your professional side, but I think more often it's from the personal side and then your historical self. So there's almost 3 sponges, and very rarely does the professional sponge really get laden with the emotion. It's more the human sponge, that personal sponge. And when we ask people, hey, how you doing? You good? That's why you usually hear, I'm fine, I'm good, it is what it is, nothing to see here. Because I really do think that 90% of the time, the professional persona is fine, unless they're second guessing, unless they feel like they messed up, could have done something better, they're going to get in trouble or whatnot. It's the skills, the skillware, and the software is good. It's the hardware and the more intangible side that can be damaged. And so that's why it's important that people feel bonded on the job too, so that they can ask each other as brothers and sisters, with eye contact and certain language and a hand on the shoulder, to say, that was rough. That was, nobody really wants to say, hey, that was a tough call. So a lot of times, especially in law enforcement, people just, they isolate, they sit in their in the patrol car, or they just dissipate and it doesn't get processed, let alone on these three different, planes of existence.
So Tracy, this is the wonderful part about this podcast and having the pleasure to do that and talk to somebody like you and our other guests is you and I could talk about this probably for days. I mean, you just hit on all these icons that we could reach out to. And one of them would be, let me go back to something you just said, is all humans have a need to be understood. And then especially first responders have a need to be understood, right? And I think part of that is we have this stoicism that we're taught you have on this armor, you wear a mask. I talk a lot about wearing a mask because I've worn a mask for years. I wore a mask for my professional life. I wore a mask in my public or in my professional life and my personal life. As a father, I had to have a mask. As a mate, I would have a mask. And now where I am in my life now, with my kids grown and me no longer being in a relationship, it's really, really hard to find the real person because you don't know which mask to put on anymore. So that first responder, like you said, going back to the three people, is wearing, perhaps he or she's wearing a mask at work. I'm good. I'm stoic. I'm fine. Nothing can bother me. Next call, I'm available. I'm 10-8. They have the man or woman at home, and then they have the one from childhood. And then this need to be understood, I think, really gets compounded because they're juggling all these personalities, if you will. That's a strong phrase, personalities, but these personas. And then when somebody says, hey, I get you as a first responder, I get that you're juggling all this, it's an aha moment that most first responders never know about, right? Because they're scared. They're scared to go, let me experiment outside of my agency and see what else is out there. I mean, have you seen that? Am I even remotely close to anything on that?
No, you're spot on. It's interesting you say masks because one of the most powerful and profound parts of our retreats is we do mask making. And so it's an exercise of identity. And I have, not in my possession, but I've had dozens in my possession of ones that have been kind of gifted to me by people. But it's always an exercise. It's a creative arts expression. It's an abstraction. And so it's a little bit off-putting for people sometimes. And they kind of look at me sideways like, this is a little bit goofy. And there's this 3-dimensional mask, and it has, it's like a paper mache kind of mask. And it's very unsettling for people. I notice they want directions right away. They want to know exactly what they need to do with the mask. There's something about that blank slate that is, I think, just starts pulling on people. So they kind of start laughing and joking and thinking this is silly. And then I talk a little bit about the history of traditional mask making, particularly among the warrior class and that. And we talk about identity, how they see themselves, how they think other people see them, how they want to be seen. And then, of course, they're different, the professional and personal personas. And so, of course, we have some really neat materials. So we have broken glass and broken mirrors and sea wire and, all these things that kind of intrigue people. And so they dig in and they dig in quickly, and we always have to cut it off. We tell them we have about 45 minutes or so. And people will oftentimes later on in the day go back and keep adding to it. I've had people tell me that they've gone to the craft store and gotten more things, that they wanted to put on. And so there's no obligation to share their mask, but there's an opportunity. And by the way, we separate the support people and the first responders when they do this. We do that a few times in the retreat, but this is sacred conversation in each group. And so they have an opportunity. We sit together and no one's under an obligation to share, but 99% of the time people do share. And if they don't, it is because there's too much emotion. And they will say that I just kind of time out, their hands, and they know the minute they open their mouths that, emotion's going to get ahead of their words. Yeah. And that's okay too, because, they still pass their mask around. And what's also interesting to me is, and it's always a very emotional exercise. And I'll see the first responders passing their masks around, and they handle them with such care. There's no reason, nothing's going to break, but they pass them around, and it's like they're passing around a newborn baby. They flip it over, they look at what's around it, they kind of just really analyze it and then pass it around, and then it gives them an opportunity to then share theirs. And it's this really wonderful experience for them. And hands down, of all the different exercises we do, people will tell us that that was the most surprising and most powerful. And I've had people tell me that they take a picture of their mask and then they paint over it, like they'll spray paint it black or white or whatever. And then every year they do a new mask. Some people have said that they brought it home and they have their teenagers or their younger kids do a mask and talk about it. That some people have put up like a shadow box and they do original masks and they keep making them to kind of see what comes out, because it's tapping into a part of their brain and subconscious that we don't, they normally don't access. And same thing with writing. We had a retreat for crime scene investigators, and one of the exercises was narrative therapy, so to speak. And so I handed them a piece of paper and it said, "Dear Death," capital D, death. And they looked at me like, I don't get it. And I said, all I want you to do is just sit there with your pen and then just see what happens. And that's very frustrating, right? Because it's like, well, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Well, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to let your brain and your mind and heart just kind of figure out what's going to come out. And so it takes a few minutes. And then again, people are like flipping the backside of the paper. They're practically starting brush fires on their page. And we kind of have to cut it off. Like, okay. And by and large, people will say that they had no idea that was in them. That they're personifying death. They're talking to death as a professional. They're talking to death as their personal experience with it. And sometimes if, in a different kind of scenario, if I was doing therapy with someone, I might ask them not to read it until a day later or a week later. And people will sometimes say, if it wasn't in my own handwriting, I would not believe that it was me who wrote it. And to me, it speaks to what is sort of trapped inside of us and kind of hiding in there, that if it's not let out, it's going to fester, and anything that's stagnant festers, and none of that is good. So I love, kind of thinking about and giving people opportunities to figure out how to get things on the outside of them. And it's not always, it can be unsettling. I've been at these types of things too. And I don't like having a nondescript activity. I'm like a very technical person, and I don't want to make a mistake, and I don't want to do something incorrectly. So I can empathize when we do those activities, but it's, the metaphors are incredibly rich, and I think it just leaves an impression that you can't get otherwise.
And we'll be right back. Every day you put your life on the line to protect and serve. Who's protecting you? United Badges Insurance Services operates as a dedicated resource for the first responder public safety community. Serving thousands of first responders, United Badges offers a wide range of products including commercial insurance, group accident and health insurance, and personal insurance such as auto, home, renters, rental properties, vacation properties, boat, motorcycle, RVs, flood, and umbrella. United Badges serves active and retired public safety personnel, public safety agencies, public safety associations, public safety support businesses, and public safety families and friends. Experience the United Badges difference. Call 800-566-5990 or visit unitedbadges.com to request your free insurance quote today. United Badges Insurance Services is a proud strategic partner of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. Applicants are individually underwritten by each respective insurance carrier and subject to insurance policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states. Promotional material for descriptive purposes only. SaferWatch and law enforcement. SaferWatch is a powerful tool that enhances public safety by improving communication between law enforcement and the community it serves. Through the SaferWatch platform, agencies can send real-time emergency and non-emergency alerts, keeping residents and visitors informed about critical incidents, safety advisories, and community updates. Additionally, SaferWatch allows the public to report crime tips, suspicious activities, and threats, providing law enforcement with valuable intelligence. SaferWatch tips have led to the prevention of school shootings, stopped sexual predators, caught wanted fugitives and burglary suspects, and has even prevented suicides. This easy-to-use two-way communication tool ensures faster response times and helps protect the community proactively. By empowering both citizens and law enforcement, SaferWatch fosters a safer, more connected community. For more information, visit saferwatchapp.com or download the free SaferWatch app on iOS or Android. Now back to the show. Yeah, and that's That's what's so important is today's law enforcement, and I can't speak for all first responders, but even though I grew up with a father as a firefighter, but today's police officers, deputy sheriffs are working 12s, which I think is one of the worst things that's ever happened. That's just John's opinion. And one of the worst things that's ever happened for your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health is a 12-hour shift. But they're isolated, they're holding calls, they're short-staffed, they're tired, they're hungry, they're eating garbage, their adrenaline's up and down. And then when they get off from the 12-hour shift, they don't have 12 hours to rest. They need to go home and reset their uniform or their gear or their rig for the next day. They're trying to unwind, they're trying to eat something, trying to sleep, and maybe get up and try to get a workout in and come back on duty. So to tap into these things that happen at a retreat, to work on a mask or to work on what's really inside, or what's that one thing that needs to come out of my sponge is full. What's the one thing that needs to come out that's most importantly? That's never going to happen unless somebody says, hey, just like the sign behind me says, take a tactical pause for your mental health and go to one of these retreats, or let's just look inwardly and process some things to help you be a better, not just a better human being, but a better first responder. So I think there's a lot of value in retreats. So tell us more about your retreat. How would somebody find it? How would somebody attend it? Is there a requirement to get in? Things like that.
No requirement other than being a first responder or a retired first responder. We love to have retirees because they bring a perspective, especially if they've been out of the service for a while. They have a perspective that that's just unique in its own right, and because they've had time to reflect, and think back. And they're also a population that is oftentimes kind of lost by the wayside. So our website is firstresponderproject.org. We just got confirmation on our dates, so I'm just about to post them. We're going to have one in May, September, and October. Those are really some of the best months out at the camp. We rent a facility out in Live Oak, Florida, and they're always very wonderful. And we usually have the 300 plus acres to ourselves. So it really is an opportunity that people have to just kind of wander and fish and kayak and decompress in nature. We try to be outside as much as possible when we're doing activities, but we also have, some nice quiet places where we have some profound conversations. But all people have to do is go on and sign up for it. The retreats that are at that facility in Live Oak are the restoration retreats, and those are for first responders and a primary support person. That can be a coworker. We just have to room people together. That's the only caveat of someone who's not a family member. But everybody gets their own hotel, their camp hotel, in their own private facility. And then the minute they show up, it's all free of charge. We fundraise so that we can provide this for them because we know it takes. Their loved one might be taking off a day of work. They have to drive to get there and use gas money. They might not be able to, work a second job. So we know that it's an investment to show up. So we want to make sure that they don't have to pay for anything. So all the food is catered, the activities, the materials, the instruction, the housing, all of that is provided for them. So once they show up, then we've taken it from there. And it's really a registration form, not an application. So they register, answer a few questions. Some of it is just logistics. Do you have any food allergies and things like that? But we don't go into we don't ask a lot of personal questions. We just want to make sure that, they feel comfortable. And then we reach out and we give them reminders and let them know that it's coming up. Because it's a no cost retreat, in the past, we've had people no show. Because I think mentally it's like, well, it doesn't cost anything. So if I can go to, I can go to. If I can't, I can't. But naturally, we have to pay for that, in their spots. So we just instituted, after 5 years of me resisting this, a down payment, or not a down payment, but a registration hold fee. And that gets reimbursed. So if they cancel outside of a week before it starts, and obviously when they show up, we just refund their money right then and there on the spot. And it's really just to hold their spot, and for them to put skin in the game a little bit. But it's a nominal, it's about less than a fifth of the cost to host it, for us to host them. And that's it. And if they can't make it and they have to cancel, we get them in on another one. We're also going to be adding additional retreats that are just coworker retreats. So as I mentioned before, we had one for crime scene investigators. We had one for ICAC detectives. I'd really like to be adding one. We will be adding one this year for specifically for smaller units like violent crimes, special victims, victim advocates. We did have one for dispatchers as well. We'll have one for corrections. The other ones, the ones I mentioned out in Live Oak, are for all first responders, so they tend to be more generic, and typically it's in police and fire. But we do these smaller unit retreats because those units have unique characteristics and exposures and some high risk type of job requirements. We like to take care of them as well. And we can take that on the road. We actually had a request from South Florida to bring, they weren't able to send their people up to one of them, so they asked us to come down there and provide one. So we'll do that as long as, as long as our fundraising efforts are successful, we'll keep doing it. We're an all volunteer organization, which is also wonderful because we get people whose heart is in it. They're not coin operated and ego driven. They're there because they want to take care of each other. And what's interesting is everyone who helps out as a peer at that retreat has obviously been through the retreat. And we have people reach out to us and asking us to be, to get involved and to be able to come back either as a logistics host or as a peer supporter. And they say that every time they go through it, they get something notably different out of it. The first time they're just sort of, in the experience and taking that from it. And that's what I love about it too, is every cohort is different. They bring a different energy and a different set of experiences and ideas about things. It's very easy to reach me through the website. And, I can honestly say we're a very humble organization. We just like to bring people in and hopefully pull people out of the shadows. For people who don't want to go to formal treatment or worried about, people finding out, this is a very easy, no cost way of restoring yourself. And sometimes people will say, well, what's the point? I've noticed this more in the first responder population than compared to the military. First responders will sometimes say, particularly law enforcement, what is the point of going to a retreat when I'm just going to start filling my cup all over again? So my answer is because you can't fill a full cup and there is no hole in our bucket. So there needs to be, a tipping over. And if we don't make an effort to tip the cup and get more space and buffer and bandwidth, then something or someone will tip it for us. Just like with emotion. If we don't handle emotion, emotion will handle us. And it will do so at a very inopportune time. Mm-hmm. And typically our loved ones are the ones who, become that collateral damage. So I think it's our responsibility, and I'm not a first responder. I guess I'd be like a third responder or something, but I think first responders owe it to themselves, to their line of work, to their families, to be proactive about that, because it's just inevitable that your cup is going to be full. It doesn't mean you have to, to let it run over. And there are so many different ways to do that are not traditional therapy. I give a talk that says, why you don't need to go to therapy. So I think that if we could shift the culture and I will tell you that on the military side, the special forces communities have embraced this concept of tuning the software and making sure that you have as much bandwidth as possible. The hardware is important, and the skillware is important, but the mindware is most important. And when you think about bad outcomes, when you think about substance use disorders and domestic violence and suicide, that is a function of the mindware. It's never a function of the software, of the skillsware. So if we could normalize it and have it be so ordinary and just typical. And of course we do this. Of course we have to go recalibrate every once in a while. Just like you zero in your weapon, just like all the other things that you do to make sure that, your gear is clean and it's ready. We have to be doing that from the neck up. And from the core, from the heart.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's a couple of things is to your point. Warriors and the ancient warriors, they knew about this. I mean, they walked the labyrinth. They would prepare their mind before a battle, after a battle, and they would spend a lot of time doing even transcendental meditation. They did these things for thousands of years, and it's just now sticking a toe in the water of American law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And it's so important to do that. And like you said, if we don't tip our own cup over, here's what happens. In my experience, my personal life experience, mm-hmm. and my personal professional experience as a former administrator is that you see use of force complaints go up.
Yes.
You see maybe some risky behavior at home. You see some domestic violence, and you see some just poor decision making. Those are huge red flags that somebody needs a break. Somebody needs a timeout. And it doesn't mean they're a bad person. It means that they're on the pathway to something really, really unhealthy. And that's why these retreats are so important. And I think what you offer and some of the other ones that are out there is so important. And we need to kind of break the stigma on reaching out and attending one of these retreats.
Absolutely. It's about quality of life and quantity of life, to be honest. I mean, we know the very sad statistics about, about length of life after a full career. But all along the way, and this is why I'm very passionate about it, is that first responders deserve to have the best quality of life. Sometimes I want to shake the shoulders of people in the community who don't understand. If you have an emergency and you make that call and you have someone showing up, from the dispatcher to the responder at your door, you want that person to be well rested, not depressed, not struggling with any kind of mental health issues. You want them to be at their best, but they need backup. Our byline in our nonprofit for First Responder Project is everyone needs backup. And that's for everybody. And I understand, as I said before, that I was that person. I was so head down in the military that I wasn't thinking about people in first responders in the community. It's very easy. You're hiding in plain sight. And nowadays, especially, there's a lot of negativity around responding, and which is even more tragic. And so I think it's pushing people, further away. But there is, I would just say, an obligation that I think needs to be pushed forward by leadership, that there's an obligation to take care of all aspects of yourself, to be the best version of yourself, when you're there, and the best version you can be when you're home. Because at the end of the day, your loved ones are going to be the ones that, that take care of you and want to see you happy, and naturally you want to see them happy. So you can't input without output. And so we want to make sure the output is as healthy as possible with really good self-care, because the input's not going to change. And unfortunately, the input can be very negative, with tragedy and human transgression.
Yeah, absolutely. For our listeners, we have a lot of listeners outside of Florida. Mm-hmm. Your retreat is not just for Florida first responders. It's open to anyone, correct?
Correct.
Any first responder.
Absolutely. It's we don't have the funding to be able to fly people in, but we are open to anybody. And we do have people coming from other states. And they, a lot of times people like coming, going into another state or getting out of their county, or their geographic area, because they just have a little bit more anonymity. But yes, we are open to anyone and everyone who is a first responder, their loved ones. And if there's any interest in, we can travel with this. So we're happy, to get our trailer and bring that to whatever area may be, whether it be after a catastrophic event and there needs to be some follow on with that. We're very, very flexible. We are all of our volunteer staff and myself are gainfully employed doing other things, but we have the passion for this and we'll make it happen. So anything that people need, we want to be there for. And if we can't provide that or we're not able to, we are not proprietary. We don't gatekeep. We want to tell people about all the other, programs out there, and, connecting people and doing the warm handoff, whatever we need to do, we'll do it. Yeah. We invite people to write to submit things for our blog on the website. It's kind of like a field journal, so to speak. It says First Responder Voices, so people can submit there. They can read what's up there. We can do training, whatever it may be. We just want to be available for people and stand in the gap for what they need.
And Doc, how do people get a hold of you specifically? Do you have a personal webpage, or is it?
They can reach me through the website, the First Responder Project at gmail.com. It's right on the website. It'll come right to me, right to my phone. They could reach me there. They can reach me I can offer a personal Gmail or a work phone, and if that's appropriate. But it's easy. I'm the only one who checks out the website. They said they can write me through there, leave a message, and I'll get back with them right away.
Okay. Would you give that one more time?
Certainly. It's the First Responder Project at gmail.com.
Okay.
And firstresponderproject.org is the website.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for coming on with us today. Our time is done. I'd love to have you come back on later in the year. Would you be able and willing to do that?
Oh, absolutely. That'd be wonderful. Always things to talk about, John. Thanks so much.
Always. Oh, yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for listening to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. FDSA proudly serves over 25,000 deputy sheriffs across the state with legal benefits, vital training, and financial assistance in times of need. You can listen to previous episodes at fldeputysheriffs.org or wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review and encourage your friends, coworkers, and those in the law enforcement community to listen as well. To learn more about the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association and how we serve those who serve, visit our website at fldeputysheriffs.org.